Hi, welcome to Two Dudes and a Midwife. I'm Lisa Harton. I'm joined with Danielle Kavanagh and Sharon Marseille. And this week we're going to be talking about the second trimester. We've covered so many subjects already and topics, and I'm excited to delve into this exciting one of the second trimester because this is when things really start to heat up. We're starting to feel things. We're starting to feel better. The nausea seems to slow down, and everything just becomes more real as a pregnancy. So, Danielle and Sharon, if you want to dive in and just start, you can start with when do we start our second trimester? What is the official time that the second trimester starts?
So, I personally absolutely love the second trimester. When I was pregnant, it brings that time when, you've kind of kept your pregnancy under wraps. And then around the 12-week mark, that's often when you've gone for your appointment, with your care provider. And, so that 12-week mark is, it's often a time when, people also tend to calm down in their pregnancies, I think, because, it's like, that pregnancy becomes viable and um, all those exciting things start happening, as Lisa said. So, Sharon, what are your thoughts of the second trimester?
Well, I think it's also can be terribly confusing in that, you've had all these early signs of pregnancy. You've got the nausea and the vomiting and the exhaustion and the breast tenderness, and that's reassuring you every day that you are pregnant today. And then after 12 weeks, things do, as you say, settle down, and that you can forget that you're pregnant then. And so for many people, it's the first time she's going to have a scan. In South Africa, most people have had many scans until now. But a lot of people want to wait until the 12-week mark because then the baby's fully formed. In actual fact, I have somebody over here that will show you what is fully formed. This is a 12-week-old fetus that you can see the total size, actual size, and the development. And so you can see ears and arms and hands. Until then, the child has been, we're looking for paddles of hands or finger buds or hand buds. And so that's how they can accurately diagnose the gestation of the fetus because of the development that they're seeing. And after 12 weeks, the baby's fully formed and now just has to mature. So if you consider why you've been exhausted until now, you're making a liver, you're making every single bone in that child's body, you're making a brain, you're making the stomach and the kidneys and blah, blah, blah. And now you've got this complete person on board. And it's wonderful to have that milestone, I think, to stop from a spiritual point of view and to consider this child on board, one person inside another. What does that mean? And how do you harbor that? And then physically, you start to feel great. And you can now forget that you're pregnant. And you need to stop from time to time during your day, and just commune again with this little person who is picking up your emotional health and your spiritual health, your physical health. And so again, it tends to be when we do the major blood tests so that we can see the standard of this, of the health of this body in which this other person is dwelling. And do we need to be doing anything in addition to what she naturally does in order to look after herself on a daily basis, in order to boost things to have this passenger on board?
So now
Sorry, Lisa.
Sorry, Danielle. When you talk about the blood test, what blood test would then go on in the second trimester?
So remember we talked about the blood test last time, and that's your antenatal screening. But now we've got the results back at the 12-week mark, and so we're discussing them. Are
Okay.
you
Okay.
anemic? Do you know about your blood group? Do you know whether or not you're immune to rubella? Because if you're working in an office situation, environment, and particularly if you're in one of those open plan offices, then you're bumping into people at the water cooler and blah, blah, blah. And if you're not immune to rubella, then you want to let people know sooner, perhaps, that you're pregnant. And if they've got somebody at home with rubella, or if they suspect that they might have rubella, being German measles, not measles, German measles, then they would let you know, so that either you can have time off or that they have time off if they've got a sick person at home, so that you're not perhaps receiving rubella in your pregnancy.
Absolutely. Sorry, Danielle, you were going to say earlier.
I love what Sharon was saying about being mindful that you are creating an entire human being. And often I love reminding my moms, because they, when you're in the pregnancy, it is very easy for the physical to just kind of take over you and take over everything in your life. Dropping keys on the floor can become, this very dramatic, terrible moment in your day. And when my moms, contact me and I have a pain over here, is that normal? And I'm really feeling like I'm so tired. And is that normal? I'm so thirsty. Like, am I okay? Should I go to the GP? Should I ask my midwife? And I keep having to remind them that they are literally creating an entire human being, and to remind them to connect to that it as much as it is a physical thing, it is also just to remind them why they are feeling so exhausted and tired
For
and
sure.
thirsty and achy, and that
No, it's exciting. It's really an exciting time, and I love it in the second trimester. Women always joke about it, but your breasts get bigger, and you're feeling more feminine, and your hips round a bit, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful time in your life. And in the pregnancy, especially that second trimester is just so exciting. That little tummy, which starts growing, and doesn't look like you've just had too big a meal. It looks like you're actually starting to show. Baby can start hearing soon. Hey, Sharon, they can start picking up on sound and
And I think also, as you're talking about the uterus growing there, Lisa, that at 12 weeks, the uterus we expect to find at the level of the symphysis pubis, so she can feel it with her hands. And then she's also going to possibly be aware of round ligament pain, which is the lateral supports of the uterus that hold the uterus centrally and stable. And what women don't understand often is that these ligaments, which are so short when you are not pregnant, because your uterus is the size of a pear when you're not pregnant, and these lateral supports are dinky and they don't grow, they just stretch. And so from that moment of 12 weeks, she can feel her uterus walking up the abdominal space, and she'll feel the tugging, pulling, stretching sensation on one side only. And then days later, she'll feel it on the other side. And so that can be confusing. And I think also that if we can get people to consider that it's not just the baby that they're creating, but that ocean of amniotic fluid, and that is the baby's protection against infection, protection against being knocked or squashed by a toddler climbing on the mother's body, and to consider how this child is protected, and that close to the end of this trimester, the baby is swallowing the amniotic fluid and learning taste as well as sound. So they get to hear the normal sounds of their environment, the mother's heartbeat going on 24 hours a day, her digestive system going on 24 hours a day, her voice, and of course the voices of those people around her, so that at the end, when say the baby is not well and is on a resuscitator or is being addressed by a pediatrician, it's so important that the dad is aware that he is standing at that resuscitator and he is speaking to that child, because the child through this trimester has got to know their father's voice, and it's that will calm them and help them to breathe effectively because of the sounds. So being aware of loud sounds, shouting sounds, bad word sounds, that doesn't mean that you have to stop it all. It means that you need to either protect the child. If you're going to have a fight with somebody, put a cushion in front of yourself. Let the child know that I'm revving up for aggro today, and it's got nothing to do with you. This is something that parents do when they're annoyed, and we'll be friends again in an hour or so.
I also heard, a lovely idea, when that baby starts to recognize sounds, and that they are often calmed by the jingle of a soap opera that their mother enjoys.
Yeah,
Yes.
And,
that's how they found it out. But in days gone by, in the 80s, when Neighbours was all the rage, you probably never heard of it, but yeah, when Neighbours was all the rage, it was on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon where I was. And so women would come away from what they were doing and sit down to watch their soapy. And it was the neighbors, everybody needs good neighbors. And when that started, the baby would lie quietly. And so that's how we know that if you're going to put music on that is familiar to the child in utero when they're on the outside, that they will again breathe differently, relax more, and go to sleep.
I
And of
love
course, the
it.
familiar sounds being those of the toddlers and the other children. That's a baby's harbor. That's their safe sounds. So if you have a small person in the family, you want to get the inside of the toilet roll, the cardboard bit, and get them to talk right down just above the pubic bone, get them to talk through the periscope, and hone in on that sound. Let them do nursery rhymes, sing little songs, so that again the baby knows their home environment.
Love that. Love that idea. So now, with the second trimester as well, obviously women start putting on a bit of weight. What is the ideal weight? What are we looking out for? And obviously, if there's a sudden weight gain, we're obviously looking at other symptoms, like other conditions like preeclampsia and that. But, so we want a steady weight gain. Why and how much, and what is safe, what is not?
If we're looking at the textbook, the textbook will tell us that we will expect 2 to 3 kilos in the first 20 weeks, not in the first trimester, in the first half of a pregnancy. But now in the modern world that we enjoy, eating has become a disease in many ways, in that we are killing ourselves with overeating and eating fast food and eating wrong things. And instead of eating sensibly, we eat for convenience, we eat for speed. We don't necessarily even, excuse me, sit down and digest. We don't put the tablecloth down on the table, commune when we're eating. We don't have conversation when we're eating. We're just having a quick sandwich while we're doing something else. And so that is having a bearing on how we digest our food. We don't necessarily think about what this food is containing from a nutritional point of view before we digest it. We just want to be filled fast because we've got other things to do. And so it helps, I think, excuse me, I'm not used to speaking so early in the morning. It helps to, first of all, address what you know about eating before you're pregnant, ideally, but definitely in that first trimester, to assess what is it that your mother has taught you about food and nutrition and health and eating, because you're going to be teaching this next generation either the same thing and the same problems and heading for the same outcomes, or you're going to be teaching your children something entirely different because now you have educated yourself around eating and you've made the adjustments in the pregnancy. I see pregnancy as a time for addressing change, for reevaluation, for considering what do I need to do in order to change things in this period of time so that I'm more comfortable with the changes that I'm making when the baby is here. And of course, that means as a family, it doesn't mean something she's doing, it's something that they are doing. It doesn't do, I think, for a family to be eating at the table and the father, it's okay for him to have the meat without the vegetables because, you know, he's the dad. We're all teaching about health and nutrition and value around life. And so it depends on her metabolic rate before she's pregnant. It depends on how easily she puts on weight before she's pregnant. What is her standard? What is her BMI before she's pregnant, as to the adjustments that she will make in that first trimester. In the second trimester, in the second half of the pregnancy, we expect her, if she is a textbook and if her body has read the textbook, to put on 0.5 kilo a week. So overall, we're expecting about 13 kilos in an average pregnancy. But if she has a diet that she needs to clean up, if she lives on white bread and margarine, and then she has to start introducing food to her body, then she might notice that she loses weight. I see pregnancy as a wonderful opportunity because your metabolic rate when you're pregnant is phenomenal and you are burning up calories at a ridiculous rate, which means that if you clean up your diet and you start to eat nutritionally valuable food, then you can tone up your bum and your hips and you can shrink those parts of you and donate them to the growth of your baby and grow a perfectly wonderfully average sized child while you reduce yourself in the process. So
I missed that step when I was pregnant.
The emotional side, though, of weight gain is so terribly important, because if you've got a partner who is pointing that out to you, that your bum's getting big, or, you know, are you pregnant in your tummy, or you're pregnant in your bum, or, you know, mean, ridiculous things that people can say when they think they're being funny, but it's going straight through to the heart and soul of a woman. I think those things need to be addressed so that she can feel comfortable in her body, so that she can see the miracle that she's participating in as she's growing this next generation of human beings.
So what should we look out for with our pregnant moms? What are we looking out for with weight gain or weight loss? Like I said, you know, we need to look for symptoms as well. So if there's a massive weight gain and there's high blood pressure, you're obviously going to delve deeper into other issues as well. So what is, say a pregnant woman puts on 20 kilograms, 30 kilograms, you know, when do you start worrying as a midwife that, okay, you know, we're going to look at this deeper?
I think you first of all have to look at that body before it was pregnant. You know, ideally a woman coming to her midwife before she's 12 weeks pregnant, or around about the 12-week mark for her first appointment. Before that, we might have had an informal chat talking about her ideas and her particular needs, physically and emotionally, mentally, for her pregnancy. So already we have looked at her normal diet. I don't think it helps to have general standards for people to follow, because we do the same thing with supplements, that we take general supplements when we're
Mhm.
pregnant, and we just assume that everybody, if you're pregnant, you must need iron. But we don't look at iron stores, and we don't look at how we utilize the iron that we're taking in from our food. And so we tend to take synthetic supplements that you might feel a false sense of security taking, because you're taking your supplements. But are you absorbing those supplements? Are you using them to the great extent that they are needed by your body? Or are you adjusting things in a fine way so that you can
Mhm.
absorb the nutrients from your body and share them? If you're considering, as you put something in your gob, into your mouth when you are pregnant, and you can see it going down through your body in your imagination, that you are sharing these nutrients with your baby, that this is going directly to the well-being, to the growth, to the development of this little passenger on board.
Mhm.
Again, you want to chew more carefully, don't you? You want to take more time to digest. You want to share it in a loving way and grow your
Mhm.
baby as a result. So there are so many aspects of food. You know,
Mhm.
she's not happy with her body before she's pregnant, and perhaps the pregnancy wasn't planned, and now she finds, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to lose the weight that I planned to lose because now I'm pregnant. Then you can see how carefully, if she's moving carefully, if she's um guided carefully, then she can have a major impact on how she feels through her
Mhm.
pregnant body. And I think that the emotional side of the physicality in this modern world is so entirely, so deeply important that we don't pay enough attention to it. I think women need to know that we don't need to weigh you when you're pregnant. Being weighed
Mhm.
for some people is is a trauma. You know, if you've been
It, it, it
somebody
is.
who's been
Mhm.
nagged through your teenage years because you're on the chubby side, or you know your mother's had you on Weight Watchers or something, and you're so aware of your body image, and then you're pregnant, and now you're going to get weighed every time you go and see your practitioner. It's very important that we can measure the baby. We can measure the growth of the uterus, of the pregnancy. We measure the fundal height with a measuring tape, and we can see the growth and the development of the pregnancy without having to weigh the mother. Though scientifically, the research shows us that the weight gain itself has no bearing on the health of a baby, in that you can dollop on weight. You can, you know, I doubled my weight when I was pregnant, but it was all water. I had the preeclampsia.
Oh,
So
dear.
you can wallop on weight, but it doesn't mean that you're growing a big baby. You can have a little
Mhm.
sparrow of a baby as a result. And you can perhaps be somebody who puts on no weight at all, and you've got a 4.5 kilogram baby. So we need to reassure women that there is no number
Yes.
associated with weight, and there's no standard. It has to be a personal standard, and we have to look at the individual woman and her family and her partnership to consider what needs to be adjusted for a pregnancy.
I
And
think that is the point. Sorry, Danielle. That is the point I was trying to get to. Is that there's no definitive answer on this, and it really is a personal journey. So
Yeah.
thank you, Danielle. Sorry.
and Sharon, on the flip side, you know, I've met a lot of women who land up with a condition called hyperemesis gravidarum, and that
Mhm.
is where these moms deal with unrelenting, constant nausea and vomiting, which can often last the entirety of their pregnancy. And it's, and unfortunately, at a time when, most women are starting to lose the nausea and feel good, there are some moms who can literally not keep any food down. I once met a mom who couldn't even swallow her own saliva. It just made her so nauseous. She couldn't read because it made her nauseous.
So there was no weight gain at all then?
And so my
Well, she would have
question,
been losing weight horribly, and of course she needs to be hospitalized. Of course, a woman can dehydrate very fast. Her pregnancy then is in danger, and she would be hospitalized for intravenous fluids.
Okay.
and it's a mom who, may not be, as severe, but still struggling with the idea of food. What would you recommend, that she have, whether it be in terms of supplements or, or just things that would generally be easier for her to keep down, but at the same time keep her body healthy so that she can keep growing her baby without losing too much to the baby, because the baby just will take from wherever it finds, and so without depleting the mom too much.
Well, I think there are so many manners of a means of getting nutrients into bodies in that. There are those women who can manage ice or ice lollies or cold food when they're feeling nauseous like that, sipping liquid like coconut water or having a coconut water ice lolly, having honey in your water. If you are looking at smoothies, you can get a whole nutritional meal in a smoothie, can't you? You could have something like vegetable juice in the afternoon, fruit juice in the morning. But of course, it has to come out of fruits, fresh, zapped, liquidized, drunk. Not, I'm going to make a jug of this and leave it in the fridge for a week. The thing's dead. We want to be eating living cells, living food. You could be having smoothies that contain yogurt or almond milk or coconut water, depending on the thickness of the food that you can consume. You don't need to be eating 3 meals a day. You need to have quality of food rather than quantity of food. You need to consider the smell of food. The way that we introduce and we get our appetites piqued is the smell of food. And of course, in your first trimester, we're looking at trying to avoid shopping centers because the smell of food is not going to be good. Then there's the happy smell of food as well. And if you can get your mum, that all-knowing creature in your life, to come and cook food that she would have cooked for you when you were a little girl in your kitchen, not cook it in her own kitchen and bring it over to you. It's already smelling different, but the start of the smell, the whetting the appetite is, of course, you're going to go off the smell of coffee, so that's not something that's going to pique your appetite. But the smell of those comfort foods that your mum would make for you when you were sick from school, and you're at home, that's the start of things. If you can start there, look at fruit. Fruit is so colorful and various that if you consider cutting up a plum or cutting up a watermelon, just to reintroduce you to something that is delicious. Hot water and lemon with mint in it, balancing yourself. I think obviously if you've got hyperemesis, then that's a disease and you're not going to be necessarily able to find your appetite. But if you've just been bumped in the first 12 weeks and your appetite has been knocked, then we want to push the restart button, really, and look at foods that will excite you. Not necessarily the croissant, but gentle foods to start with. I mean, there's something wonderful about a cucumber. If you're looking at celery and how you can smear peanut butter on it, or Philadelphia cheese, or, you know, looking at a crudité where you've got mange tout and red peppers and yellow peppers and cherry tomatoes and maybe some hummus, or and you've got beetroot hummus or something nice, tzatziki, tahini, you know, one of those things you're dipping in, and before you know it, you've got it on the table in the middle of a conversation and you've eaten the whole thing. You know, so you don't need to be force fed when you're pregnant. You don't need to have bread. You don't need to be increasing your carbs. We need to look at the quality. And if you've got a good quality supplement, I don't want to mention names, but if you did have a good quality natural supplement, then you're getting the nutrients from the earth into your body rather than the synthetic ones that you're just peeing out. You know, you can tell if you're peeing out your supplements because, first of all, you've got that interesting vitamin B smell in your pee, and it becomes a luminous color. You know, well, how did that happen? Where did that come from? So natural supplements will be absorbed by your body and your pee will be normal.
Just I know I keep going back to the nexus, but they're reality. I mean, how often does one develop, say, for instance, gestational diabetes? Is that from a diet when you're pregnant, or is that a pre-existing condition that's just been triggered by pregnancy? Can we just talk a bit about GD just to understand it better? And what are the risks? I mean, how does that affect your pregnancy? How does it affect the birth?
So that, of course, is a wonderful question, because something that we tend to not be aware of is polycystic ovaries. And, you know, the incidence of polycystic ovaries in the modern woman is so enormous that when it is diagnosed, she should be educated around the possibility that she could have to deal with gestational diabetes as a result.
But why? Will you give us a quick overview of what is PCOS? What is, you know, what is it, and why does it create the gestational diabetes, perhaps?
Oh, I have no idea. But what it
Okay.
is it's, if you imagine a strawberry and those little indentations that you see in a strawberry, well, it's like the ovaries are like that. And so these little indentations can grow and develop as cysts in the ovaries. And it's just one thing leads to the possibility or the higher incidence of the other. And it just means that the practitioner, if she's taking a history from the mum, and she knows that this mum has experienced polycystic ovaries in her gynecological journey, then we're looking out for it more obviously in its development. So we check the pee every time a mum is coming to see us, and we're looking for signs of glucose in the urine. There are those of us who would have 2 incidents of sugar in the urine and then send a mum for a glucose tolerance test, and others who just do it routinely on everybody, possibly because the incidence of polycystic ovaries is so much higher than it ever has been before. If it is going to become severe, and if she becomes the diabetic who needs insulin to balance her in her pregnancy, or say she was borderline diabetic before she was pregnant, and now the pregnancy, the demands of the pregnancy have tipped her over into the gestational diabetes, then there's a huge strain on her body and things could go haywire, in which case she's going to need a physician to guide her through her balance of her insulin in order to either maintain, we want to get her to as close to the end of 38, 40 weeks as possible, it may mean that she needs to be induced at 36 weeks. So 36 weeks is a major milestone, and we're not talking about it today. But if she's got to that point, then it might mean that her obstetrician, because she's going to be with an obstetrician, not a midwife, then will be guiding her to the strain on her body, and is it a better thing to end the pregnancy, possibly by inducing her into labor, in order to protect her body from the rest of a pregnancy. The baby's at a good size now, the baby's at a good gestational age and can manage being born, and the relief to that woman's body by ending the pregnancy can be of great benefit to her general health. We don't want to have a baby end up in the special care unit because of the sugar levels in the mother's body on a constant basis. It means that the baby's pancreas has been overworked, that the baby is likely to have an unstable sugar level and therefore needs to be observed at least in the special care unit. In order, because the sugar levels have been so high, now when the baby's on the outside, all their own systems need to work, but they've been suppressed in the pregnancy. And so, at least observation will be necessary to make sure that that baby can manage a normal level of sugar later.
So that's great. The baby, it's not great, but what I'm saying is, if it's controlled through diet, it's not necessary that every pregnant woman with gestational diabetes is going to end up on insulin.
No.
So when they pick it up early on, it's purely by finding glucose in the urine, and they say there is a possibility there's gestational diabetes. They obviously go along and have a lot more tests done, or how does it work?
If there's sugar in the urine, then we know that something's overloading. So if there's sugar in the urine, it can be not diabetes at all. Sometimes you've just got leaky kidneys, which means that if you imagine your digestive system as a great long conveyor belt, and you've got these people sitting at the conveyor belt and they're picking up all the goodies, all the gems, if you like, and putting them back into the system. That's your excretory system. And sometimes things are going so fast on this conveyor belt when you're pregnant that things can go through when they should have been returned to the body. They go through and they're found in your urine. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a disease. And that's why if we have signs of things that are not perfect when you are pregnant, we have recourse then to send you for further investigation before we're making a diagnosis, which is possibly unfair. But if we can pick up gestational diabetes early in the pregnancy, then we've got more opportunity to manage it and therefore keep her healthy and keep the baby at a good, healthy environment, and not have, if you imagine a child, it's like a queen bee, you're living on the goodies, the worker bees are bringing this queen bee all the goodies and therefore growing this enormous bee who becomes the queen of the hive. And I see diabetes in the same way, is that this child is overloaded with stuff and therefore they grow to large proportions that is not necessarily healthy for the child. If you're going to grow a gestational diabetic baby at 4.5 kilos or more, it doesn't mean it's a healthy child. And so we're trying to keep babies away from the special care unit, not because it's a bad place to go, because that's a place where they save babies' lives, but because of separation anxiety for the mother. It interferes with her breastfeeding, the bonding, and for those reasons we need to keep babies healthy. So we want to keep pregnancies healthy. So we're looking first of all at health. and how to be healthy, how to maintain your health. And then should signs come to the fore where things are a bit dodgy, that's when we're having conversations about which way this might go. This might go back to normal, might get more complicated, in which case I'm going to refer you to the obstetrician, and he is going to look more at balancing the body from a pharmaceutical point of view or from a medical stand.
Okay, so I mean that's wonderful. So it's definitely something everyone should be aware of when pregnant. About
I think
the
more
urine test.
aware of the fact that we work in partnership.
Sorry.
You know, that no carer is a carer in isolation, that we are a team of people looking after each woman. And so as long as she is healthy, she will maintain her care with her midwife, and she will see her obstetrician twice maybe in her pregnancy, just to again reassure her that everything is fine, that there is nothing here to be concerned about. But as long as she is maintaining a healthy pregnancy, then she's guided by her midwife. As soon as she is no longer normal, because we are experts on normal people who are having normal pregnancies and therefore normal labors and normal births, as long as she's doing that, she's with her midwife. As soon as she becomes not abnormal, but out of the realm of normal, then she's got the assistance, the input from the medical expert who is the doctor.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Danielle, with regards to GD? Have you had any experience with it?
So personally, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovaries. Long before I was married. It was something. From my very first period, my mother could tell. This is normal, and so I think it was always something that was on the forefront, and that when it eventually came for me to have my children, we knew how to circumvent the issue. We knew that the reason why it must have been the main reason why I was struggling to fall pregnant. And so those were we took those, like, all of that in mind, and I was able to fall pregnant very easily with people in the know, and gestational
and birth with the midwife.
Absolutely, I managed.
Yeah.
Interestingly, gestational diabetes was not a thing for me. In terms of when we say that it's often linked with polycystic ovaries, it was I tended more. To be honest, my midwife could tell from my urine that I hadn't been drinking enough. So that was the biggest thing, and I went on to have very healthy pregnancies and wonderful births. So
Fantastic.
when you do have someone. When you do have, a knowledgeable team looking after you, it doesn't necessarily spell gloom and doom when you're diagnosed with these conditions. So
absolutely. Yeah. No, that's good. I'm glad we chatted about it, because I think it's on everybody's minds when they fall pregnant or in the second trimester, especially, like, am I going to develop any of these things? Because, and another thing that I was thinking about was there's a natural like swelling when you're pregnant. Your ankles sometimes swell up and you feel a little bit bloated, or when is it a concern and when is it natural? When is it normal? And how can we, I know, lie back, elevate your legs, drink more water, but when is it a concern if somebody is in their second trimester and they start with the swollen ankles? Sharon?
Me.
Yes.
Well, I'm afraid it's not normal. And again, if
Okay.
we're looking at the diet, there's no need for that at all. We don't need to inflate because we're pregnant. We are just pregnant. You might find that your feet spread because of the weight, but we're looking more 36, 38 weeks then. But retention of water is again diet related. You know, if we're looking at
Okay.
refined food, anything that has been refined, anything that comes in a jar, in a can, in a tin, in a bottle, has been refined. It's got sugar added or it's got salt added. And so it impacts on our bodies. And if we were to go back to cooking food from scratch, that doesn't mean homemade stew from a particular output place, because it says homemade on it. It means buy the vegetables and the meat and cook it at home, and that's homemade. And then if you're doing that, you know, you're not having the excess of the refined
Mm.
food stuff in your food, you're less likely to retain water. Again, yeah, we need to look at how many raw fruits and vegetables. It's one of the main reasons why my mums do a raw diet from 36 weeks is they have no water retention. And the thing about water retention is that if you are going to retain water in your ankles, in your feet, in your face, in your hands, then you're going to retain water in your cervix. And that is one of the reasons why we have such a high incidence of induction and augmentation. Because if your cervix is healthy and natural, then it is going to be an elasticated um, purse string. You know, if you imagine it as a bag with a drawstring top, the uterus inverted is a bag with a baby in it with a drawstring top, which is the cervix, which is the neck of the uterus. We turn it all upside down. The baby's in this bit, and the cervix is here, and it's pulled tightly closed in order to prevent the baby from falling out when you're pregnant. But it's going to relax from 36 weeks. It's going to soften from 37 weeks. It's going to start shortening 38 weeks. It's going to start opening 39, 40, 41 weeks. And the baby's going to be pushed down onto it and it's going to open. But if it is retaining water, if it's puffy, if it is edematous, and edematous means that you can push your finger into your flesh and it leaves an indentation. And if the cervix is like that, it's like a donut ring instead of an
Mm.
elasticated, stretchy, wonderful tissue, in which case it's not going to open, it's going to be stubborn. And when you hear women talking about how I couldn't get beyond 4 centimeters or I stayed there forever, sometimes that's the cause. And so if you are not retaining water, and you can see you're not retaining water in your ankles, in your feet, in your face, in your hands, then you know you're not retaining it in the cervix, and the cervix is more likely to be elastic and to behave the way it is designed to behave. But if we were going back to that second trimester, I was hoping we were going to talk about when to feel fetal movement for the first
No, we're
time.
going to get to
You know,
that. Yeah,
because
no,
women
we've gone
worry
on
about
to,
that.
yeah, all the
Because we
worries. Yeah.
keep nudging on the third trimester, and
Sorry.
we need
Okay. Let's go
to the
back to the
second
second
one. Because,
trimester.
you know, first time mums, we only expect them to feel movement around about weeks. So second time mums, we're going to expect them to be able to feel movement much sooner. You know, they're looking at movement around about 16 weeks. Again, depending on your BMI and how much adipose tissue you have supporting that. But a first time mum, we don't expect her to feel movement until she's 20 weeks pregnant. And the more she can spend time on her hands and knees, it doesn't mean she has to go and scrub the floors. She can go gardening or yogaing or pilates or something like that. But the more time she can spend on her hands and knees, it tips the uterus forward and puts it in touch with the abdominal wall. and she's more likely to feel movement sooner. So my mums, I expect them, I educate them around the fact I want them to be able to tell me with their magic finger where they felt movement, because so many people will tell them, oh, that's not movement, that's digestion or something mean. But if you know where to find your uterus at any particular time in your gestational growth, and that's the uterus, that's the baby, everything else, of course, the bowel has to be shoved and moved out of the way. And so, of course, you're going to feel it complain from time to time as it gets squashed and relocated. But yeah, to have the joy of that connection as soon as is possible, so that this little person is safe each day. Because, of course, from 28 weeks, we're going to be talking about kick charts and about how she can choose to the daily well-being of her baby. Because when you're talking about viability, 28 weeks, if that child had to be born at 28 weeks, then they could go to the university of their choice if she's on the job and if she's aware that there's something not right in her body. And again, that's why we need to listen to the pregnant woman, because there's her intuition, there's her internal knowledge of her baby and her baby's well-being. And if we can start growing that maternal instinct, even though they're so busy telling me, but this is the first time I've ever been pregnant, and I don't know, but you do know, because the minute you're pregnant, now you are a mother, and now you have this maternal instinct that is growing and developing. And so we want to hone in on that as well.
And Sharon, the positioning of the placenta, we often hear about an anterior placenta, where the placenta is has attached itself more to the front of the uterus. And would that make a difference in how the mom feels her baby's movements?
Yes, absolutely. Let me just go and get my uterus. Hang on. Don't go away.
So we often picture the placenta, as more towards the top of the uterus, and it's different.
Okay, so here's the uterus. Here's a uterus. There's the vagina. Here's the cervix, which is like a drawstring. See, there's a bag. There's your drawstring. Here's the uterus, and there's the drawstring, which is the cervix, and this is the birth canal, which doesn't normally fall off like that. Here is your passenger within here. See? And this is how we want the baby lying. So if then the placenta is in the front of the uterus, then you can see how that forms a cushion between the passenger inside and the kicking and the communication between the baby and the mother. There is a cushion between her abdominal wall and the baby. So the baby will be kicking into the placenta, and so she will feel movement later. She'll only feel movement once the baby's feet, the length of the child, the growth of the baby is such that the feet can now reach above where the placenta is, and then she'll feel movement. Most commonly, the placenta is supposed to, if it's following the direction of the textbook, to land in the fundus, and the fundus being the top part, the most muscular part of the uterus, and the placenta, we would like to know, is housed up here. Sometimes you've got a posterior placenta, which means that it's in the back behind. So she'll feel movement at a normal time. The placenta will be behind. It doesn't mean anything. But of course, what we don't want is the placenta to be in the bottom, which will be placenta previa. And there are various grades of that. The most dramatic would be if the placenta is right over the cervix here, and therefore clearly the baby will not be able to get out until the placenta is out first, and that means a very good reason to have an elective cesarean section.
Okay. What else are we looking for in the second trimester?
Danielle?
We're looking for that glow.
What happens with your hair and your skin and your nails? Everything just starts growing beautifully. Your hair becomes voluminous. Why is that?
The voluminous hair. Well, that's a lovely one, because when you're pregnant, you know how when you're combing your hair, you normally have hair that falls out. But when you're pregnant, all of that
Excuse
hair
me.
that would have fallen out in those months doesn't fall out while you're pregnant. It will fall out after you're no longer pregnant. And then people think they're losing their hair. Most women don't lose their hair, they just lose the hair that they would have lost while they were pregnant. So it can be a bit dramatic and a bit scary, but you're not actually going to go bald. Some people do, but it's very rare. And so the glowing side is because you get extra blood flow through everything. You now have to direct blood through the placenta to the baby. You're sending the baby all the nutrients through your blood system. You're sending your baby lots of love and oxygen, obviously, through the placenta and the cord. And so you get at 28 weeks, which is why, again, we check your blood. That's the end of your second trimester. We're checking your blood again at 28 weeks, because very often you will have a physiological anemic stage, which means that you get an increase in your blood plasma by 1.5 liters, but you don't get an increase in the red blood cells that carry the oxygen. And so that's when you're likely to feel breathless and tired. If you're going to use the stairs instead of the lift, you'll be huffing and puffing on the landing on the way up. And that's a normal thing. It's normal that you're going to fall asleep in the afternoon after work around about 28 weeks. And so we check the hemoglobin at 28 weeks to see, are the supplements that you are taking enough? Have they been effective? Do you need an extra boost of anything before you get to the end of your third trimester and the labor process that you need to physically contend with in order to get this child out of your body? So we want you to be the healthiest, strongest, most wonderful person at the end of your whole pregnant journey, so that, of course, the dramatic part of labor can be managed easily with a healthy body. So we check for antibodies if you are rhesus negative at 28 weeks, and we check for the hemoglobin at 28 weeks to make sure that you're not anemic. And then we've got time to fix it if you are.
It really makes a difference, that feeling healthy. And I've seen it so many times where moms get to the end of their pregnancies and they feel that they have nothing left with which to push their babies out. And I've seen so many, and we can talk about the extreme cases like the hyperemesis, where they've literally possibly even been hospitalized on a drip, just to get some form of nutrients in them. But even moms who just are just so completely run down and haven't been looking after themselves, and then it kind of gets to the end of the pregnancy, and the idea of pushing out the baby is far more scarier than just lying on a hospital bed having an elective C-section, because they have nothing left. So I think that second trimester, it's so important to use that time when you generally are feeling so much better, obviously in a normal textbook case, to keep yourself, to just to look after yourself, so that when you hit that third trimester, it isn't such an enormous shock to your body, because it is, that baby puts on more weight, and there's a whole lot of changes going on, and that when you get to that point, it's so that it's training to run a marathon. I often say to my moms that going into labor and having a baby is like running a marathon without training for it first. And you actually can train. And I think that second trimester is so important, so that we use that that grab onto that opportunity where we're feeling better, so that, as we discussed with the foods and everything, just to keep yourself, look after yourself, so that you've got that stamina, you've got that energy at the end to finish up your pregnancy and push that baby.
I know. I think
But
in the
I think
second
also
trimester,
discuss informed choices with mums. That point that you mentioned there, that she could be too tired at the end of her pregnancy and therefore choose to have a cesarean section because it's going to be easier. She clearly needs to have the conversation with her caregiver around, if you're too tired at the end of a pregnancy, having major surgery is not necessarily the answer to make that easier. If you're going to be starting off too tired physically, and then you've got a new baby to look after, that's
it's
not
going to be
the solution. The solution would be to avoid getting there in the first place. And also, therefore, to look at maternity leave. When should we be taking that? What is she entitled to? What is that department of education at work, when they tell you what you're allowed to have? How can she manage her annual leave and her maternity leave in order to make sure that she's not exhausted? And what about the mums who want to just go and have a vitamin B booster intravenously? It's all available to us now. Should she be having an iron top up intravenously or intramuscularly because she's feeling tired? Or should she manage her career, her time, her rest time in a different way? Not necessarily better, but in a different way, so that she can be all things to all people that she needs to be as an average woman.
Ladies, I could talk to you all day. I mean, we just carry on, but we're coming to the top of the hour here, and we need to kind of round it up. So the takeaway from today is really about getting yourself informed during that second trimester. Really delve into your pregnancy, read the books, do the exercises, speak, get hold of your mother, sit down, learn about it, and know what you want and what to expect and what to look out for. I think, it's a beautiful, beautiful time, but there are things that you do need to just keep your eyes and ears open for. So, Danielle, how did you feel about today's talk? What's your takeaway?
Yeah, no, it's something that I love the second trimester. It's and it should be a time where, as we've discussed, that not just physically looking after yourself, but emotionally just enjoying and connecting to your pregnancy, and just enjoying the time where you can start connecting to your baby, feeling those little movements, those little bumps and the little flutters, and so to just utilize every moment to connect to that little person that we're growing.
Sharon, your takeaway today?
This is the trimester in which women need to really look at where do they get information and what do they need information regarding, not only nutrition and health and being the mother to raise the next generation, but what other topics do they need to know more about? What is the difference between the cesarean section and the vaginal birth? What about support from family? What about support from work? What are they entitled to, being a pregnant woman and leave wise? And what about other topics like vaccination and things that they need to know? Do I need to go to a workshop on this? Where do I get a proper informed choice? Because an informed choice means that there is discussion about both sides of a topic, so that they can inform themselves and therefore make a choice.
Love it.
Wow.
Ladies, as always, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. This has been two doulas and a midwife, just enjoying the conversation. And we'll see you next week.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.